Hi, I'm Dr. Kaczynski, and this is Plastic Surgery One-on-One, your internet source for the answers to all your plastic surgery questions. Today we're going to be talking about fat grafting. This is a topic that's come up in the news recently, especially with respect to stem cells and fat grafting, and we'll get into that a little bit later. First of all, let's just talk about basic fat grafting. This is a procedure that has been around since the 1980s. Conceptually, it's very simple. You're taking fat from one part of the body and replacing into another. It's somewhat like your garden. If you have a row of rose bushes on one side of your garden and you decide one day they'll look a lot better on the other side of your garden, you take the rose bushes, you remove them, and you replant them on the other side of the garden. And usually most of the rose bushes make it. Some of them go into shock and die. That also happens with the fat cells. You rarely get 100% take of the fat that you've transplanted, but usually the take or the amount of living fat is 30 to 70% in my experience. And I've been doing this for about 20 years. So what is the basic problem for which fat grafting is a solution? We can look at various parts of the body. First, we'll look at the face. What happens as people get older is you lose fat in your face. If you look at pictures of yourself in high school or in college, you'll notice that your face is quite full. Your body may be very thin, but your face is quite full. You have chubby cheeks. And as people get older, they lose fat. The final example of that is if you look at people in a nursing home or very elderly people, they look very, very thin, and you can almost see the outlines of their skull bones. So what happens is that as we get older, we lose fat in our cheeks, we lose fat in our temples, we actually lose fat in our brows, which is part of the contribution to your brows dropping, and you actually lose a little bit of fat around the mouth, and especially in the mouth. So these are the areas that we can perform fat grafting. It can be done either combined with some sort of lifting, because every person ages individually and has different issues with stretching, sagging, loss of elasticity, fat accumulation versus fat atrophy. So some people have this predictable pattern where they lose a lot of fat in their face as they get older. Some people actually gain. Obviously that is also dependent on how much absolute total weight you gain. So fat grafting in the face is a very good procedure because it restores volume that is lost. I often do it in combination with either a cheek lift or with the full facelift. The reason is when you just lift and pull, you're not adding any volume. And if you think about it, a young face, somebody who's a teenager, somebody who's in their 20s, those people don't have tight, thin, pulled skin. They actually have relatively chubby faces. You can actually pinch them and they have fullness. So if you're really looking for youthfulness, youthfulization, a combination of lifting and filling works. Now, some people just need the filling. These are usually people that are younger and have special issues. Another place where fat grafting is used is in liposuction repair. In the past, before Vaser, laser, and all the various new technologies, liposuction had a much higher incidence of complications with respect to rippling, wrinkling, and dimpling. Also, cellulite wasn't improved as much as it is now. So what you could actually see are little pock marks and dimples and things like that. And what fat grafting does is you can take fat from one part of the body, doesn't have to be up here, and then literally spackle these areas by lifting it up with a little instrument that separates the skin and then filling in these defects. And sometimes if there's a little bulge, then we do a little bit of lipo on either side. And the goal is to get as smooth a contour and as smooth a curve as possible. Now, another place on the body where fat grafting works is in people who are either an apple shape, which means that most of your fat is above your waist and not in your legs, versus a pear shape where most of the extra fat is in your hips and thighs. So in apple-shaped people, or people that just want more fullness, more definition, a quotes J-Lo type of butt, we can do what's called a Brazilian butt lift. Now that's just a nice alliterative term that means you're taking fat from one place, you're filling up the buttocks. As a result of that, a flat buttock becomes a rounder buttock. And as a result of filling, this also does a little bit of lifting without having to make a big incision across the top and doing the lifting that way. So since this was popularized in Brazil, that's why it's called a Brazilian butt lift. Basically how it works is we'll take fat from the area where you don't want it, usually in the hips and or the back, and that is put into the buttock area. And it's put in through several incisions and in several layers. It's put in at the skin layer, it's put in at the muscle layer, and also layers in between. And it's put in very tiny amounts so that it's more likely to take or heal in or seed itself in these areas. So if you look at it from the side, if this is the muscle layer and this is the skin, we're putting in fat here, here, and here. So at every level, and that's what gives you the fullness. So very simply put, that's what a Brazilian butt lift does.